Well, here we are, another Ovadia Heart Health Telemedicine live stream. I'm thrilled to have Casey Ruff on the program. Casey is the host of the Boundless Body podcast. Did I get the name right, or did I already screw up in the first
Yeah,
15 seconds? Okay.
Boundless Body Radio is the name of it.
Boundless Body Radio. And he's done more than 850 episodes. So he has got to be one of the, if not the most prolific podcast hosts that I know of, at least in the low carb fitness, health, um, you know, improvement space. And you also did a podcast called How to Do a Podcast, if my research is correct.
That's right.
So you have a lot of knowledge about podcasting and a lot of knowledge about fitness and health. I'm going to let you talk about that in a few minutes. I want to put up the legal disclaimer. We have two non-medical doctors talking about health and improvement and wellness. None of the information that we're going to talk about today is to be confused with medical advice. It's for information and educational purposes only. And if you want to talk to anyone at Ovadia Heart Health for medical advice or medical consultation, we would be glad to talk to you. You can just reach us at team@ifixhearts.com. That's the email address. And with that out of the way, Casey, why don't you tell our audience, first of all, what got you into the podcast and the health and wellness space? You know, what got you going? How did it all start? I mean, the fact that you have done 850 podcast interviews, and we're not talking just about, random interviews with no names off the street. You've interviewed personal success stories. You've interviewed experts in the field, people that probably pretty hard to get on a podcast. So the fact that you're able to book these guests is a testament to what you've accomplished and the reputation you've developed over the last several years. When did this start? How did it get going? And I'd like to know more about where it's taking you.
Well, sure. And yeah, thank you for the kind words. And yeah, for the disclaimer, Chris and I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night, but that doesn't make us a doctor. So, I had been in the fitness space already as a personal trainer, nutrition coach for about 13 years. I'd been interested in fitness and, worked at a gym in high school. I learned how to lift weights when I was, 15 years old. I played sports all my life. But during the pandemic, we lost our jobs at my wife and I lost our jobs at the big corporate gym that we were at. We were placed on unemployment, and given the circumstances of the 2020 pandemic, we decided to open up our own business. And podcasting was just such an amazing place where I could learn from so many people out there. It was kind of the first time that I'd ever heard about the carnivore diet, for example, was on the Joe Rogan podcast. So the episode he did with Sean Baker in 2017, 2018. And once I started to learn about low carbohydrate around 2018, like that was the last time I listened to music in my car. Basically, I just tried to get as much information through podcasting as I could. And my dad, he does sports here locally in the Salt Lake Valley. He's been at the same sports station for over 40 years now. And, I've seen him around athletes and doing interviews and questions, and that alongside the nature of just being a personal trainer, I'm basically doing hour-long sessions with people or 30-minute sessions with people, and it's a form of an interview. I'm interested in people and I want to know what they do and how their day was and what questions they have and that kind of thing. So I guess it was a little bit more natural for me to want to try to do one of those on my own. Of course, I have the same, imposter syndrome and still do, of thinking like, what could I possibly do or say that somebody isn't already doing or saying much better. But yeah, it was in October of 2020. I kind of envisioned the project would be something my wife and I would do together, but her business is really great and she rarely has time to jump on with me. Although I've interviewed her on the podcast several times, it's been great. And yeah, we pushed record on an episode where we interviewed each other, and then I just started to reach out to interesting people that I knew. I always wanted to keep the podcast very general as far as information goes. I kind of had the thought that, like, if I pigeonholed myself in on like a carnivore podcast or a fitness podcast or a ketogenic podcast, that I wouldn't be able to just talk with anybody. And I kind of had the idea that, if I interview somebody about foot mechanics, that might get exposed to somebody who cares about a carnivore diet. And if I talk to a professional hockey player, he might get some insight into a ketogenic diet. So we do keep things pretty general. I don't think it panned out the way that I thought it would, as far as like exposing lots of people to lots of different ideas. But I don't really care. It's my podcast. It's really fun, and it's been a great journey. And you're right, like, just being at the San Diego conference that you and I were just at, the Symposium of Metabolic Health. It was kind of interesting because I'm sitting there on, I believe it was Saturday. I think there were 7 different speakers, and 6 of them I knew personally, have met personally, and have hosted them on my show. So that part of it is really cool, that I get to have hopefully unique and interesting conversations with people in our space, with yourself included. I've got to interview you as well. We've got a second one coming up soon, and your story is so inspiring, and so many people have inspiring stories, where we live in a world where everybody thinks they're failing and they don't know what to do and they don't have the right information to be able to share that. It's been an amazing journey, and we have no intention of slowing down anytime soon.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. I got to say, I'm inspired by what you do. I for a long time, I have some similarities in terms of my ambitions with learning from others, and watching somebody like you who does it so well is inspiring. And I was wondering if you have any tips for people, because you have been able. First of all, when you go to get a guest that you think might be out of reach, what what allows you to just approach them, ask them, hey, well, you want to be on my podcast? Do you worry about rejection? Do you worry about what are they going to say? I'm sure you have less concerns now than you did 3-4 years ago. But I think a lot of people, you talked about imposter syndrome. I think a lot of people go through life with imposter syndrome. Uh, what gives you the confidence to just put it out there and say, hey, come on my podcast. I'm not afraid. Go and tell us about that.
Excuse me. Sure. Yeah, I get nervous before every episode still to this day, whether it's somebody who is just getting started on their journey and they're not on a lot of podcasts, or somebody that you and I would, kind of call like an expert in our field. I do get nervous about every conversation that I have. Um, I'm really fortunate in the beginning, that I invited people who never asked me how many people were listening to the podcast, how many downloads we had, what our reach was. I mean, our first 30 episodes, I had Dr. Sean Baker, I had Dr. or Mark Cucuzella, Ben Bickman, I believe, was episode number 30. Um, these were all people that just were like, "Yeah, I would love to be on your podcast." They didn't ask. And my favorite example of all of them was Dr. Bill Schindler. I mean, somebody who I had put on a pedestal for many years, and he hadn't come out with his book yet, but had his concept of Eat Like a Human already. And I'll never forget the email that he sent back, where he just said, "Casey, I would love to be on your podcast. That would be great." And that's all he said. He didn't ask about any of that other stuff. And so I think initially that helped me to gain confidence, and understand that these people are willing to have conversations, with people out there. Um, there's so much kindness in our space, with people like that, and so that really helped for sure. Um, and yeah, like I'm listening to, I'm listening to myself now, and I still say a million times, and I have a voice that's a little too high and a little too fast and whatever. And so, understanding that, I guess at the end of the day, I have found that there are people that listen to my silly podcast and not listen to somebody else's, because I don't know, there's a way that is explained on my podcast that connects with somebody. And my advice to anybody out there, and it's cool too, because so many people find this, and there is that desire to share. I don't find that with many other fields. Like, somebody has their favorite soccer team and they want to go share with everybody how amazing their soccer team was, or they buy a Ford car and they say, oh my gosh, I got to tell everybody about Fords. But when this, you understand, when this kind of information changes your life so much for the better, it's really hard to keep that down, and you want to share that with somebody. And so the advice I give is to say, like, anybody out there who's listening, like, you have a voice, you have a story, find a platform. I would start small, pick your favorite platform, whatever that is, and share in a way that makes you feel comfortable, whether that's 30-second videos, whether that's long form interviews, whether that's video or audio, or maybe you're writing things and sending them to email lists. However you decide to do, you have to start. You're not going to have a lot of followers. You need to consider your motivations. You're probably not going to generate a lot of money out of doing something like that. But if you have a desire to share, focus on something and start sharing. Get it out there. I know lots of people who, even just in this last year, have found this, and they started channels, and they might have like 30 subscribers or followers, but they're being consistent and putting stuff out there, and eventually it grows and people find it, and you're doing exactly what you want to do. So my advice would be to know that you are appreciated, you have a voice, you've got a story. And as the book, like the art, the war of art, I'm sorry, the war of art, kind of says, like, if you've got a gift and you're not sharing it, you're robbing the rest of us of bringing that forward.
Oh, amazing, amazing stuff. I think, like you just made some great points with you can pick your channel. It could be a podcast, or it could even just be a presence on Twitter or X, as it's called now, and or Instagram or YouTube. And the fact that you went through a list of people like Mark Gazella and Sean Baker, Ben Bickman. I mean, some big names that and you're right. These people, they have something that they know is valuable to others, and they have an interest in sharing that information. And I learned that on X, back when I had 19 followers, and I would ask questions, whether it be about fitness, weight loss. Not too long after I had I went through cancer, and I was asking questions about cancer, and I got a lot of help and support just by putting myself out there. Once I realized the worst that can happen is somebody could either ignore you or say no, and that is the worst that can happen. I mean, it's like, and the percentage of people that are willing to reach out, help, give support, is incredible. And so I know personally that this type of stuff, the conversation that we're having right now, interviews that I've done with experts, conversations I've had on X, and you talk about the diversity of interest group. Like I've benefited in my meager running career. I've benefited in so many different areas which I don't have a lot of expertise in, but people are willing to share. So that's all very powerful stuff. I'm curious, when you have your podcast, you've interviewed so many different people. Are there any characteristics that you find particularly appealing, as a podcast host? Any things that sort of stand out? Any things that are unexpected but really make for a good podcast episode? Just curious about picking your brain for things you've learned along the way, things that make for the best interviews.
That's a great question. I love that question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. So as a host, I want to try to extract somebody's message, obviously, and people have their shtick and their thing they want to talk about. Maybe it's a book or a program or something they've created. So I always want to leave space for them to do that. But beyond that, I realize that a lot of these people have done many, many, many different interviews. And I'll go back to the Dr. Sean Baker interview that I did with him. I feel like, I was really early on, but I felt like when I listened back on that episode, it was very pedestrian, and it was very much a classic Sean Baker episode, and one that I had heard already 20 times. And I realized kind of then that, like, maybe I could go a little bit deeper, a little bit further. Maybe I could do a little bit more research on somebody, or find different parts of their content that doesn't get talked about very much. So for example, like, I asked Gary Taubes about his book, The Case for Keto, and the pictures of the different diets that he put in the back of the book. I've never heard him talk about it on any other podcast. And as I asked him about it, he's like, yeah, nobody comments about it. I've never been asked about that on the air. Same with Nina Teicholz. I did a second or third interview with Nina Teicholz, and I told her before, like, I want to talk about, you have an entire chapter about the Mediterranean diet and how that got conjured up. I never hear you talk about that. She's like, I never get the chance to. It's always just, the Ansel Keys stuff. And so I like to find a different angle, something that's a story that's hidden in plain sight or not really talked about. that's maybe a little bit more on the hosting side as far as like something that I really enjoy. I also really enjoy um, getting into things that I didn't think I really cared about. So, for example, on Netflix several years ago, they started putting out a show called Drive to Survive, all about Formula One. And it kept popping up and popping up and popping up as my recommended feed. And I'm just like, why are they recommending this? I have no interest in car racing. This is so stupid. Within 5 minutes of watching episode one of season one, I'm just like, whoa, this is amazing. And now I watch a lot of the races, I'm into it and all that stuff. I would have never been exposed to that had it been suggested. And so I like to find, little things here and there that people are into that I have no idea about, and to be able to ask curious questions about. I think that's fun. I think it's enjoyable, and I like hearing people's perspectives and opinions on things. So hopefully that answers the question. But those are things that I'm thinking about kind of as a host of, you know, I I, I care that my audience thinks that the topic is interesting and people are interesting. And that said, I like to just kind of create as much of the uniqueness as I possibly can.
Well, that comes out in your podcast. It comes out when I hear you talk. Um, I'm wondering if you have any advice for people. I know there's a lot of them listening right now, and a lot of people will listen to the recording, which will be available on the iFix Hearts YouTube channel. Which, by the way, I know you made an early appearance about 3 years ago on iFix Hearts with Dr. Phil Ovadia, who has Ovadia Heart Health Telemedicine practice, which he launched in 2020. Um, so I'm just wondering if you have any advice for people who want to do a better job of telling their story. Everybody talks about sort of the bullet points that would be on their website, but a lot of people don't put it into a way that really draws engagement. Um, and I know you have a lot of knowledge about this. You do it well yourself, but you also have the opportunity to see what works and what doesn't work for people as they try to tell their story to others in a way that will provide some engagement and some interest.
That's a great question. Can I answer that in two different ways?
Of course.
So I would say the first part would be a little bit more the technical side of things. This is your kind of content creation and how, like, practically you put that out there. And I'll give you a really good example. We started primarily as an audio only podcast. Didn't have great bandwidth to do video recordings with Zoom. The quality wasn't very good. And I didn't really want to learn video editing and producing and all that stuff anyway. So we just focused on audio. As our bandwidth got better, we were able to record videos, and now we have a YouTube channel. I'm extremely minimalist, excuse me, on what I put, especially on the video side of things. We still focus on the audio only, and I want the quality there to be as high as possible. The videos are just kind of a side thing. They're kind of fun. And, I will always release the full episode that I do with somebody as like a tease, like the day before the audio comes out. And then I'll cut that up even further to release maybe a 10 or 15-minute clip on YouTube that's talking about one particular topic. So if somebody's explaining insulin resistance and I find it particularly interesting, I'm going to go back later, edit that in, make a cut to edit that and put that. So I'm dropping content on YouTube every single day. I have done content on YouTube every single day, very minimally. And I have for years now, like 3.5 years. And I have like 2.5 thousand followers to subscribers on YouTube. Okay, like that's a tremendous amount. Even though it's minimal, it's a tremendous amount of work to not have more subscribers. I interviewed somebody today who's into butchery. Probably a lot of people in our space would know him. His name's Brad, and he's known as the Butcher Wizard. So if you've ever pulled up videos on how to break down like a chuck roll or a New York strip and have really less expensive and more tasty steaks, people know him because he focuses on making really great content, having titles that catch people's attention, having graphics and production that are well above and beyond what I'm doing. And guess what? He gets noticed. He has well over 300,000 followers on his channel. And his desire and my desire might be the same, to share a message. Who's actually sharing the message more effectively? Now, again, that's not my main focus. That's not how we get our clients, and I don't have tons of time for that. But if my goal were to reach more people, he's pulling it off, and I'm really not, because he's focusing on all those things that people really care about and is making it interesting. I get probably, 6 to 10 emails a day from somebody in a different country saying, dude, your SEO sucks. You're not getting enough views on YouTube. And I acknowledge that. I get it. I'm not willing to pay for it, and I don't really do it. So that would be the technical answer, is like, focus on making your stuff look good. When you're starting, anything's fine, but like the audio quality, it's important. The lighting is important. Echoes and editing and all that other stuff is important. So be thinking about that, because if you want to share, you don't want to share your message with less people. You want more people to hear it. Those things really matter. And the second way I'm going to answer that is, I would recommend listening to people who you find to be amazing to listen to, and listen to how they deliver their story and how they talk. There's a certain cadence. Maybe that's, TED Talks or interviews that they give. And whoever you think is eloquent, who's funny, maybe, who's interesting, who's educational, there's just a different way that they present their information that captures an audience. And if you're listening to this and you know of people who you love to listen to, see what you can do to, not only watch their stuff because you enjoy it, but what can you incorporate in your own story to make your presentation a little bit better, a little bit funnier, a little bit more interesting, whatever that looks like to you, to really capture the audience. Because I think you and I see that all the time in these conferences where, we hear a lot of really good presenters. Some are maybe not as great, and you look around and some people are, enthralled with the information, and some people are maybe a little bit more disengaged. If you've ever seen Ben Bickman present at a conference, dude, he's a teacher like a professor at college, who he says, like, I'm competing with everybody's iPhone and Instagram. I have to capture their attention. And you look at him present, and everybody in the room is just like, whoa, like, he's so engaging and funny and interesting. Try to emulate those in the way that you tell your story, and I think that will pay dividends in the number of people you can connect with.
Excellent advice. Very interesting. I want to move on a little bit to the the health and coaching that you do, and I'd like you to tell our audience, what you focus on, how you help people, and what you see some of the biggest needs for well, the basic unhealthy American population that we currently have.
Absolutely. So, having done this for as long as I have, I mean, I got certified as a personal trainer in 2007. Like I said, that was after working at a gym for several years when I was in high school. You know the advice. You know what to tell people. My textbooks behind me tell me what to tell people, exactly how to exercise, doing, functional exercise training, using all these different apparatuses, and here's the exact number of sets and reps and order of exercises you have to do. And alongside that, you understand the standard advice. My nutrition certification, which is behind me, focuses on getting people the lean proteins, the fruits and vegetables, making sure they're avoiding fats, or, the term in the last 10 years, healthy fat. Like, that was not a thing when I got started. It was just, don't eat fat. And then all of a sudden there was like this healthy fat, and apparently that was like avocados and olives all of a sudden. Like, okay, I guess there's a healthy fat now. It's just doing that for so many years and having it fail over and over and over and over and over again. You just, being in the industry, you just think that, it's kind of the thing that Jason Fung talks about, where you just blame the victim. Like, oh, these people are kind of slobby and they don't really listen to us and they don't have the willpower. Or, they started in January and thought they could do it, and by February they're already giving up. You just understood that people were not willing to put in the work to cook all the vegetables and make sure they had brown rice and, wheat bread and all that stuff. After a while, it's just, it's not as fun, because people are not getting the results that you thought you were going to get them. And through a combination of working, like I worked with, metabolic carts and measuring people's metabolism and trying to shift people's metabolic rates to be higher so they burn more calories all the time, and more towards burning fat versus burning sugar. That was the way I was taught to be a cyclist, for example, is you are a sugar burner, you eat tons of sugar while you're biking, because otherwise you run out, you bonk. All of a sudden there was like this whole other way of doing things where you could actually teach somebody to do, burn fat better, by changing their diet and including a little bit more fat in the diet. And then, I'll never forget, in 2018, we were doing this stupid weight loss contest. We had to do a quarterly weight loss contest with the company that I was with. And it was a complete a complete failure. Most people would fail. It was a big packet of exotic ingredients and recipes nobody would cook, and exercise that was way too intense that nobody would do. And we were, as trainers with the company, we were forced to put through people through this program. We hated it. It sucked. It didn't work for anybody. And I had somebody come to me. I listened to his diet. I could at least tell that he just didn't have a lot of fat and protein in his diet. And so I just told him, like, look, man, you're waking up and eating cereal in the middle of the night. Let's see if we can get you more full at dinner time, so you're at least not doing that. And he went away and came back a few days later and said, hey, I've already lost a few pounds. What's this keto stuff? And so that kind of sent me down that rabbit hole of keto and eventually carnivore and learning about that. And so that's primarily the way that we work with people today. I don't train people in the same way that I used to. I don't train people in the way that I was originally trained. I think that I found better, more effective ways to be able to do that. And same with nutrition. Like the standard nutrition advice that we've been giving people for so long, it doesn't work. It's not working for anybody, but everybody kind of feels like it's just not working for them in isolation. They don't realize that it's already not worked for everybody. You've already tried this 10 times in your life every January for the last decade or whatever. Like it's designed to fail. It's designed to make people in my industry lots of money by selling you more programs and more coaching and more supplements and whatever we think you need, or you think you need to be able to get the right results. Once you change the information and basically do the opposite of what they tell you to do, now you get people results really quite easily. It's almost harder for me to find somebody who doesn't get really good results finding some variation of a low carbohydrate leaning diet depending on their goals and motivations, and changing the way they do things like strength training, doing what we call high intensity training, where you're challenging the muscles to a point of really deep fatigue in a session. It just you can help more people, but you might not make as much money because, again, you're not selling the latest and greatest sexy new thing. It's just like, no, let's find a simple diet that works for you. You don't need a ton of variety. Cook meals that are really enjoyable for yourself. Let's do some really effective strength training. You don't need to do hours and hours of that either. And it's just so much more fun. Again, I can help more people by doing that. So that's how we do our business, is we just work with people based on the time that they have. We can train people or do nutrition coaching with people in person around the valley, around our neighborhood, at our house. My wife does a lot of work here, or the way that we're having this conversation today is through our phone. I just got back from Chicago virtually to train one of my clients 10 minutes before this conversation, and she's getting great results, and I've never even met her in person. So you can be really pragmatic, and it doesn't take a lot of, again, like a lot of investment, a lot of coaching and exotic stuff. People are used to doing all that stuff, and they think that's what they need, and it's absolutely not. So that's kind of the difference in how we work with people today versus how other people work with their people, or how I would have worked with people in the past.
Um, yeah, excellent information. If you as you look back on all the clients that you've helped, do you see any common threads in terms of characteristics among people that lead one to success while another might fail? Like, are there any things that predict success for someone when it comes to improving body composition, lowering body fat, sustaining a physical regimen, exercise program?
I should be asking you this question. You're the best example of this anyway. Like, you're the best one to answer this question. I hope, I think you'll agree with me as this goes, but like a desire to learn and be patient, sure. I think it really takes consistency. The people that want to get something done sooner rather than later, they tend to kind of like flare up really quickly and then kind of like lose their motivation a little bit more quickly. I think that also comes with trying to change too many things too soon versus changing something really small and letting that evolve and grow, I think, is the best thing. And again, when I look at your own personal story, I see you at these conferences, and I'm like, wow, this dude has been super healthy his entire life. Like, clearly, there's no shred of any evidence that you were ever unhealthy a day in your life. Like, you look great. You've got great muscle in your 60s. You're very lean. You're very energetic. You're friendly and happy, and all these things that anybody would want to be at your age. They would never assume that you had gone from that other side. And at some point, like there's days where you probably didn't want to get your workouts in, or you didn't want to eat the way that you did, or cookies still taste really good. Cake is still very tasty for a lot of people. Pizza is still a pizza. But if you're willing to do the change, you're willing to be patient with it, those are the people that I see that stick with it longer and actually achieve their goals. I had a day a few weeks ago where two separate clients in two separate sessions, completely unrelated, both said the same thing where they were like, I feel like I'm making progress. I really wanted to have lost this much weight at this point, but I don't care as much right now because I'm on the journey. Like I'm going to where I need to go. I care less that it had to be by this date and this wedding and this whatever. I'm happy. I'm feeling good. My brain is working better. I'm not snacking as much. And yeah, I'm losing weight. I would love for it all to be gone yesterday, but I'm on the path and I'm happy with that. And so that kind of person, whether they're working with me or not, I don't worry about that person anymore. I feel good that that person is going to get to where they need to go. They're willing to put in the work. They didn't get there, to the space where they're at overnight. It took a lot of years and bad advice to get them there, and it's going to take some time to get out of it. But those that accept that and are willing to put in that process, I think those are the ones that that see the success that they like. And again, I think you're a great example of that.
Oh, thanks. I think you hit on something that's very important to me, and that's um, that it's a journey and not a destination. Um, and I picked up Gary Taubes's book, Why We Get Fat, back in January of 2018, and it was within 3 weeks of finishing that book and starting a low carb diet that I realized that it didn't matter how quick I got to my goal. And so that's the same revelation that you just described in your client. It's like once you realize this is a life journey and that you're going to do everything you can to make it as good as possible, um, no longer do you have to deal with willpower and fighting off, you know, cravings. You're finding something that's sustainable, and once you realize that it is sustainable, it changes everything. So I think that's really powerful. Um, so most of the clients that you work with are they doing low carb, ketogenic, carnivore type of diet?
That's a great question. Not all of them. I think most of them are aware of what I talk about and promote and what I have on the podcast. We work with people wherever they are and whatever they want to do. So it's not like I'm shoving this down their throat. I do an initial consultation and tell them what I do and what I found and say like, hey, doors always open if you want to talk about this. Happy to talk to you about this and work with you to get on this path. At the very least, if somebody is moving more towards eating the proteins and fats and letting the carbohydrates just kind of reduce in their diet, they're at least on the path and they should see some good results from that initially. Always wanted the door to be open to discuss some of those things, but I've also been a little bit more a bull in the china shop in the past about, oh, this is the best, you got to do this, get on this as quickly as you can. And I think you and I have both benefited from listening to Rashani Singhani's incredible presentations at the Symposium for Metabolic Health. When I heard her speak for the first time last year, she's in Mumbai, India, has to fly literally halfway around the world to come to this conference, which was her first low carbohydrate conference last year. She presented on the same kind of thing this year, and it's all about the proper communication and motivational interviewing that is communicating a message to somebody in a way that they'll be open and receptive to it. And her work is in just I can't say enough about it. And like I sit there as she's presenting and saying like, how are you going to get somebody to want to change when you're the one telling them, oh, you need to change, here's why you need to change, I did it and look at all the great things that happen. You create resistance and shut down the other person. How many times have I done that in my life with my clients? Way too many. And it's so stupid. And like by doing what she does and saying like, if one of my clients says, hey, I'd really love to get to the gym, but I don't have the time to be able to do it. It's too far away. When I say like, oh, well, you really should try a little harder. Maybe there's something you need to give up in order to make the time, or if you go to the gym, you're going to get double the results. That doesn't help anybody by saying like that it's even on your mind that you're trying to get to the gym another time a week. That's really amazing. I understand you're very busy, you've got a lot going on. It is a challenge, so that's even on your mind is really great. you now completely change the energy of that conversation, and maybe that person is going to be willing to say and come up with something on their own. Like, yeah, going to the gym is hard, but do you have a set of bands you would suggest that I could do from home in 20 minutes? I could probably fit that in. I'm way more likely to get that kind of response where it's an idea coming from them. And I love the way she said in her original chat, like, when you're having a conversation, there are two experts involved, and you might have the pieces of paper in the frame on the wall behind you, and you might think you know a lot about all this stuff. And yeah, I travel to conferences, I listen to podcasts, I read all the books, I study this stuff a lot. I can maybe sort of kind of consider myself an expert in that material. Maybe I am not an expert in that person. The person I'm communicating with is the expert on that person. And again, how many wasted, stupid conversations I've had in my life where I forget that. It's so silly. And having her information of like, you really want to be able to like communicate this in a way that makes it feel like it's that person's idea, you'll change so much more. So I don't know, that has been more helpful in my career than like learning any of the facts in books. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes. I'm glad you brought her up. I just reached behind me, and this is the book that she published last year. I've also had the pleasure of speaking with her and interviewing her, but I listened to her do a Grand Rounds presentation for the SMHP um, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, and it was fascinating because it was the first time that I'd ever heard about motivational interviewing, and I've referred back to that often, and she's incredible. And you're so right. I mean, you have to meet people where they are, and I love what you said about that individual being the expert in themselves, because you can talk until you're blue in the face, and you're not going to force your way on very many people. And you might convince them to sort of pretend to agree with you during your face to face with them, but it's not going to stick. So very, very observant of you, and yeah, I'm right on the same page. Um, so what? Let's see. Oh, I wanted to tell people where they can find you. I want to make sure I get that up before we go too much further. I think if I've got my set up properly, that's a good place for people to find you.
It's the best place. Yep. That's where we send everybody is simply our website, which is myboundlessbody.com. You find everything when you find that. So yeah, you'll find the podcast, you'll find all of our social media stuff, you'll find our YouTube channel where we publish the interviews video style, like I said earlier. Last summer I did a seminar series in my neighborhood where it was maybe like 14 different lessons with a little bit of like curriculum and some outlines and different things that I did that taught different concepts of nutrition. That was a lot of fun. All the lessons are there, all the videos are there, meal plans that I created are there. There's all kinds of stuff available. But yeah, the easiest place is what you have on the screen right now, which is our website, myboundlessbody.com. We tell everybody on every podcast episode that we offer a free complimentary consultation that people can sign up for. Very easy to sign up in whatever time zone you are. It will sync to your own schedule. We love just chatting with people about whatever their goals are. And so that's the best place. Exactly right. So good guess.
Um, and then they can also find you on X. You're Casey Ruff. That's your handle. And any other platforms you'd like to highlight or point people to?
I'm on, most of the somewhat reasonable platforms. Like you can find me on like LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. My Instagram account got hacked last year, and so I had to recreate it. And my Twitter account I started well before I was doing anything in the metabolic space and had started my business. So my handles everywhere are they're not very like um, consistent. There
Mm-hmm.
was no thought behind them. So if you go to the website, you can find the links, direct links to all that stuff, and people can find that. But yeah, generally speaking, Casey Ruff or Casey Boundless Body, or again, whatever, you can find it on the website, and you'll find me eventually.
Let's see. I want to make sure also that I let people know we have an opportunity for anyone listening right now, or people that listen to the recording. If you go to ifixhearts.com/Chris, you can get a free digital copy of Dr. Ovadia's book, Stay Off My Operating Table, which is a great resource. And I predict that anybody that gets a digital copy will ultimately end up buying a copy of the print version, because I know personally I've referred to this many times, a great introduction to ways that you can improve your metabolic health. So just go to ifixhearts.com/Chris, and you'll get a free digital copy of Stay Off My Operating Table. What are some? Tell me some of the things that you've learned. Any patterns that you've learned over the last few years as you've evolved in your thinking about diet, from the diet that you talked about before, the more mainstream diet, as you progressed to being more accepting and embracing a low carb diet. Are there any first let's talk about low hanging fruit that somebody that has let themselves go. Maybe they are resigned to poor health and mediocre fitness. What are some of the things people can do today or this week to start turning things around?
That's a great question. I find that we tend to think that we're going to go in and overhaul somebody's diet. We're going to change a bunch of stuff. You're doing this all wrong. Let's fix this. Let's take these things out. When I do an intake with somebody, I don't even if I did an intake on myself, like nobody would be like perfect the way I would think, like, oh, this is the very best diet. You got everything nailed, nothing to talk about here. There's always something you can, mess with or fix, if you want to use that as the word. But I also think even if you're on like the worst diet, there's probably a good chunk of things that a person is doing correctly or is doing right, and maybe it's just all about doing a little bit more of that. You know what I mean? So like, who doesn't like pizza, right? Like everybody likes pizza. Like, okay, awesome, you like pizza. What if you next time choose a thinner crust? You really like pepperoni. Why don't we just double the pepperoni? That would be an easy thing. You're already doing that. You already enjoy that. Maybe just getting a little bit more of that fat and protein will just help carry you to be a little bit more full, and might eliminate the need for ice cream after the pizza, for example. Or, you're already doing the burrito. What would it be like to like maybe replace half of the rice and beans with way more meat? Like season up some meat if you're cooking it at home, or you can order it like this at a restaurant. Those are all things people already enjoy doing and like doing, and maybe they just didn't know that that was the best thing, or they needed permission to be able to do that. And chances are they might like that even better. And again, it's just all about creating like that small win that's more likely to get you another win and another win and another win. We have the stories in the fitness industry. I can't say that I've ever told anybody to do this, but the story's told, and I know people have done this. If you want to establish a habit of going to the gym, make a habit of going to swipe your card, I don't know, whatever you think is a ridiculously easy number of times a week, and do not even let yourself go into the gym area. Swipe your card, walk around the desk, walk right out, get back in your car, and drive home. Just try that. Try that for a few weeks. You're not doing anything. Maybe it's on the way home from work anyway. But eventually, what's going to happen when you start doing that is like, okay, well, the front desk people are looking at me like I'm ridiculous. Maybe I am a little bit ridiculous. Maybe I will just go upstairs and walk on the treadmill for like 10 minutes so they, don't give me the weird look anymore. And then maybe they start lifting weight. Like you just start these habits by these really small steps. Another example I'll give is it was back in 2011, 2012, maybe. We as a company started using fitness trackers, especially like step counters. Like you could wear them on your watch or on your sides. We all know like the popular companies that jumped on board with that. It became this like new thing that rather than focus on like heart rate, we're focusing on steps. And so we would do challenges and try to engage our members and like who can get the most steps. And we create leaderboards and all this fun stuff. I developed a habit back then of, parking in basically one of the furthest spots that I could find and walking the furthest into a building to be able to maximize my steps. And I haven't owned one of those fitness trackers in probably a decade, but guess what I still do every time, just out of sheer habit. I don't even mean to do it. I just do it. I just park at the farthest spot. I walk in. How many miles? How many breaths of fresh air? How much sunshine? How much low stress, not fighting other people for parking spots? When you compound that with how many trips to Costco and all these stops that I do for so many years. Like that's over a decade at this point. And I don't even think about it. It's enjoyable for me and has been for years and years and years. So it's just little things like that. I want people to, that think like there's no hope for me. I got to this spot, this space. I tried all the things. I did all the diets. Cabbage soup diet didn't work for me. What else am I going to do? There's still hope for you. There's a lot that you can do. And we can start really, really small and create habits out of probably some things you're already doing really well and just capitalize on doing those a little bit more,
That you could probably write a whole blog post just on that basic idea. Some great ideas. I do the same thing with the parking. I used to be the guy that would never make more than one trip with the carload of groceries. I would tuck like all 27 bags and try to walk into my house. And now it's like, hey, extra opportunity to get some more steps.
Curl bags.
I'll make a few trips and maybe save the sockets of my shoulder joints in the process.
Good call.
Talk to me a little bit.
If you can hear me, I can't hear you. I lost all your audio. It sounded like there was an impact. I don't know if you can hear me, but it sounded like there was an impact on something. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, got it.
Okay. So I don't know what happened with our connection. I apologize. We'll edit that in the recording. Talk about people that are maybe in their 50s or 60s who don't envision a path to building muscle. I know you have a lot of experience with personal training and resistance training. What are the realistic potential that someone in their 50s has if they've gotten behind the game in terms of muscle and fitness?
Again, I believe this is a you question that you should be asking or answering, my friend. Man, I've seen it firsthand. I had a client in his 70s, and he started personal training with me. We did some weightlifting, and I just thought, like, okay, best case scenario, we lift a few things, and hopefully he doesn't lose too much muscle. But he's past his 30s, like we're not gaining any muscle. Are you kidding me? What a limited belief system. He absolutely gained tons of muscle and did amazing at his age in his 70s. I was even talking to one of my old friends today over the phone. She's been a personal trainer for, maybe 10, 12 years, and she's now working in a retirement home. She's training people as a volunteer, kind of volunteer work in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. And it's some kind of chair fitness or whatever. And she talks about like it makes a difference. They're lifting bands and they feel better. And the people that are doing it say like, "Oh, I'm moving a lot better. I'm in less pain. Like I can hang out with my grandkids a lot better." There's never too late. There's always something you can do. You don't need full access to a gym. You could hire a trainer for one session and buy a few bands on Amazon, and you could get an awesome workout like once or twice a week. You don't need tons and tons and tons of things. It's never too late. There's always something you can do, and it will pay you back. You will feel better. Like if you're living a limited life and you wish you could play with your grandkids, or you wish you could go hike up the hill to go watch an amazing sunset, and you feel limited by that, there's no need for that. That doesn't always have to be your case. Like there's steps you can take, and they're not as hard as you think. They can be more simple and easy. Like we said earlier, that you can start really very easily and work your way up, and it will be paying you back as you go. It's not like you have to do all this crazy work and you'll only get the benefit at the very end. There is no end, like you said earlier. It's a journey. Take a step today, you'll feel a little better. Take a step tomorrow, you'll feel a little better. Like you just go slow, and it's making it better as you go. Like you're never ever too late for sure. Love the question.
Well, thanks. Great answers. I see this all the time. I mean, like on X, I'm surrounded by people in their 50s, 60s, and older. And even today, in one of my coaching sessions, I spoke with someone in their mid 60s, and they had seen the fitness challenge that is coming out of the Make America Healthy movement, and I saw the inspiration in him. And a couple hours later, he said that after his personal training session today, he went and they didn't have a pull-up bar at the gym. I guess it's a small gym with a small set of machines or whatever. But he went and found a tree and did 2 pull-ups at age 65.
Oh,
And
really?
so I think that anybody, and that's just a start. I mean, he did 2 consecutive pull-ups today. He's determined to get 5. So I think that'll happen. Let's see. I had a quote that I pulled off somewhere. So I think it's attributed to you. You said aging should be awesome. You said that somewhere on a podcast as I was doing some research. That sound like something you remember saying, or
Yeah, I would love to take credit for being the
still hear me?
original. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I
Hello?
think we're having a little more problem.
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I would love to take credit for being the.
Yes. Yeah, we're having some technical problems. Not sure what's going on. But anyway, we're
Weird.
getting close to the end. And let me put your website back on the screen. Let's see. And nothing seems to be working.
I wonder what happened.
Any better, Casey?
I can hear you. It's just really intermittent and like pinging a little bit, but I can hear you.
All right, I put your website back. Maybe we wrap it up. And I've had a great conversation with you, and I look forward to being on your podcast in the near future. And thank you for coming on. You've given our over 500 live listeners some great insights and great advice. And I hope people go visit you at myboundlessbody.com, listen to the podcast, and check out all your social media channels. Thanks again for coming on, and thanks everybody that joined the live stream today. Sorry for the technical problems, but for the most part, we got a really good interview. I can cut out the bad parts, and we'll be good. Thanks a lot, Casey.
Thank you.